Our next speaker is Sister Shalini Mulakal, belonging to the Order of the Presentation of the Blessed Virgin Mary, based in New Delhi, India. Sister Shalini's experience as theologian and working closely with the Jesuits has given her a vast look at how the relationship with women in the Church has been evolving, an evolution that has not always been smooth. Sister?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Who will receive the vows of our sisters? The Mother General asked Sister Annie J.C., who, along with her community, wanted to have a legal battle against the parish priest and the bishops of the diocese to get back the ownership of their land, which the congregation had purchased in 1926. They began a school in 1945. The parish priest was appointed as the nominee manager of the school. In 1971, when a new Education Act came in, the vicar at that time forged documents and changed the management and educational agency of the school to the vicar of the parish. When the sisters came to know about it in 2007, the convent authorities, bowing to the pressure exerted by the diocesan bishops and the priests, wanted to surrender and give the land to them. But the community of 6 sisters, ranging from the age of 91 to 44, they did not give in. They legally fought the battle. They fought the battle for justice, going against the dictates of the bishops, the priests, and their own Mother General. At the end, they won the case. In the process, they were cut off from the congregation. They stood together because they knew the truth was on their side. Even though the 6 sisters were fighting for justice, none of the bishops or the other congregations came to support them. They were left all alone. They were labeled as the disobedient ones. When the case was over and they got back their property, those 6 sisters were accepted back to the congregation through the reconciliation process. However, even today, they are seen as the disobedient ones, the rebellious ones, and they are treated rather badly in various convents. The case did not end here. Recently, the provincial made an attempt to give over the land to the diocese and the 2 schools and the property. But since she could not do it because it amounted to disrespecting the order of the Supreme Court, she took a decision during the provincial chapter to close the convent and then hand over the entire property to the diocese. The decision is still on, not yet executed. The above case brings to the fore the unjust manipulations due to unequal power relations that exist between the church hierarchy and the religious sisters. The hierarchy often exerts control over consecrated women, directly or indirectly, under the guise of obedience. Even when they feel that they are on the right, women religious are not in a position to resist because their life is very much dependent on the sacramental life of the church, which is fully in the hands of the ordained clergy. Often, sacraments are used as a tool to keep women religious under control. It is not so uncommon for a priest to refuse to celebrate Holy Eucharist in a convent if the sisters are not obeying his orders. Moreover, the constitution or the rule of each congregation, drawn in accordance with the canon law of the church, which is formulated by the clergy, with the women playing no part in it. In another instance, some sisters were involved in fighting for the rights of fisher people way back in 1984. At the peak of the struggle, the leaders of the movement thought of using fast unto death as a tool to lobby for the rights of the downtrodden. Some sisters volunteered to undertake fast unto death. However, they were not allowed to go ahead because the bishops did not want such means to be used by religious women. Putting pressure on their respective provincials, they managed to withdraw sisters from that struggle. Those who disobeyed the orders, they had to leave the congregation. A few facts about Indian church would be in order at this juncture. Though Christianity existed in India since apostolic times, Christians form only 2.3% of the total population. Of these, the Catholics number around 19.9 million and consecrated women 94,000. Catholic women religious in India are not a homogeneous group. They are different on many counts, including their belongingness to either international congregation or the local ones. There is a distinction between these two groups. Those belong to the international congregations are more critical in their thinking and are able to change according to the signs of the time. But how are these women accepted in a highly patriarchal and hierarchical church? For example, way back in 1979, the Presentation Sisters in India decided to change their religious habit and to wear sari, which is typically an Indian dress, as you can see me wearing. This is a sari. This was in keeping with the call of the Vatican II for inculturation. In some dioceses where the Presentation Sisters lived and worked, the bishop of the place refused to give them an appointment if they wore a sari and not a religious habit. While the sisters belonging to the international congregations have some space for independent thinking, those belonging to the local congregations are fully under the control of the patriarchal church. Often, sisters are not even allowed to pray in a way that is more meaningful and relevant to them. On the other hand, sisters belonging to the international congregations are influenced by feminist thinking and are making changes in their attitudes and in their governance. They are moving away from a patriarchal attitude, a patriarchal worldview, and are making changes accordingly. So we hear of participative leadership, team leadership, consensus in decision making, dialogue as a way of life, etc. Terms like Mother General, General Chapter, Mother Superior, these have been replaced by congregational leader, congregational gathering, local leader, etc. But as far as I understand, this is not taking place for the vast majority of religious women in India. Their understanding of the vow of obedience is still very narrow. It is pre-Vatican in the sense that obedience is seen more as a blind obedience to the decisions of the legitimate authority. Personal search for God's will is not encouraged. This is understandable since the women who come to join religious life have already internalized patriarchal conditioning, patriarchal value system in which they consider male domination and male-centeredness as normal. Women are taught to accept their inferior position in society, at home, as well as within the church. However, the vow of obedience which the religious take is not meant to create an attitude of subservience or servitude. It is a vow through which one commits oneself to seek and do God's will at each moment of one's life. The individual is responsible to seek and do God's will, and God's will is manifested to her in various ways, and one among these various ways is through the legitimate authority, if the authority wants is not against one's own individual conscience. Therefore, dialogue and discernment become important in living the vow of obedience. But this understanding of the vow of obedience is not seen among the vast majority of us in India, but there are a few women breaking out. Sister Valsa John is a case in point. She was brutally hacked to death by a mob of 40 armed men on November 15, 2011. A good example of discerning God's will even against the desires of the legitimate authority is seen in her life. She joined religious life in 1984. Though she was appointed as a full-time teacher in 1993, she requested her superiors to relieve her from the school. They were not so willing to allow her to follow her own conscience, the inner voice that was calling her to commit herself to the downtrodden. Finally, the superiors allowed her, and she left the comfort of the convent and chose to live among the poor tribals in a place called Pajwara, way back in 1998. She ate with them, she walked the hills with them. Sometimes she even slept under the trees and on the riverbeds along with them after participating in night-long deliberations. She began mobilizing the people of Pachwara and other adjoining villages to resist the coal mining project. She managed to get the people organized, negotiated with the company, and got adequate compensation for the tribals whose land was handed over to the company. Her presence was a great threat to the establishment, and they planned for her killing using the same people whom she was serving. When she was killed brutally, the only possession they found in her one-room rented house was a Bible and the Constitution of India. For many religious women in India, breaking out of the culture of silence is a Herculean task. It means to come out of one's internalized patriarchal conditioning and to struggle in a hierarchical and patriarchal church for equality, for self-respect, and recognition of their identity as consecrated women in the church. This struggle will necessarily demand a deeper faith in Jesus and an inner strength to live by one's convictions, even if one is denied of the sacramental life of the church temporarily. Creating awareness among religious women towards this is an urgent task. Women religious in India need to be empowered women in every sense of the word so that they could help their less privileged, voiceless, powerless sisters in the Indian society on the path of true empowerment. Thank you.